Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. How about a midnight bonus, midnight snack for y'all to go to bed with? Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon and please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I've taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's midnight bonus, shall we? Today's first encounter brings us to Vietnam War era. In the Vietnam War. Now, really quick, I know a lot of us all have relatives that served during that time. Well, my dad did, and I asked him a couple quick questions before I did this upload, and I shared it with him. He kind of looked at me and walked away. About an hour later, he came back to me and said, "You know, I got some pretty crazy stuff I'd like to share with you sometime soon." And it kind of made my eyebrows rise and my eyes bug a little bit. And I said, "Thanks, Dad." And I've got some feelings that we're going to be having some pretty crazy stuff come out of that man's mouth. And I'll be sharing that with you very soon. But until then, this'll do. The difficulties of American troops during the Vietnam War often are attributed to the skillful tactics of its opponent and lack of support on the home front. But U.S. forces were hampered by another stealthy enemy in Southeast Asia, vampires. From the beginning, combat in Vietnam jungles presented new challenges for American troops. The Army, in particular, was trained and equipped for conventional, mechanicalized wars, such as what they had faced in Europe. In Vietnam, with its jungle fighting, was a new game. The Viet Cong were masters of guerrilla warfare, during which they would hit troops with surprise attacks, and then recede back into the jungle. They also effectively used small villages as bases and ammunition stores. In an attempt to turn the tables, the U.S. Marine Corps developed a Civil Operations and Revolutionary Development Support, or CORDS, program, which assigned small units to patrol the villages. The Marines sought to recruit members of indigenous tribes in the mountain regions of West Vietnam to help them. But the Marines quickly discovered that the tribes were fearful of venturing into certain areas because of the presence of the Ma, or phantoms. One tribe in particular, the Montagnard, spoke of reanimated corpses that haunted the jungle, drinking the blood and consuming the internal organs of people unlucky enough to cross their paths. U.S. commanders were quick to dismiss the claims as local superstition. Alas, it wasn't superstition at all. Reports of troop encounters with ghouls in the jungle began to trickle into U.S. command around 1965. The first of the stories involved troops catching glimpses of ghostly figures moving through the jungle. Soldiers saw these creatures, describe them as having fangs and black eyes. And then soldiers began to disappear from the platoons. In one incident, 2 American soldiers rescued one of their comrades from a creature that appeared to be impervious to their bullets. U.S. commanders initially suspected vampires as Vietnam, home to 41 species of bats, had a history of outbreaks. One person infected in the isolated jungle village with no access to vaccine could quickly spread the infection through the entire community. Flamethrowers were key to vampire mop-up efforts during the Vietnam War. Strangely though, the undead creatures often appeared in daylight hours, a feat thought impossible for vampires. One platoon of American troops found an entire village of San Ho occupied by these creatures. Despite the daylight hour, the embattled creatures managed to flee into the surrounding jungle. With troop morale plummeting and the Viet Cong making gangs, top army brass brought several high-ranking FVZA agents to Saigon in fall of '66 for consultation. The army helicoptered the agents out to the village of San Ho, scene of the daytime battle between U.S. troops and the Ghouls. Once there, the agents noticed that the triple canopy jungle was filtering almost all the sunlight before it reached the ground. They speculated that this filtering was enabling the vampires to operate in daytime. In a report to President Lyndon B. Johnson, the FVZA concluded that eliminating the vampires would be virtually impossible in the Vietnam jungle. When Johnson read the conclusion, he famously said, "If the jungle's the problem, then let's get rid of the damn jungle." Thus began the infamous Vietnam herbicidal warfare program. The military chose a defoliant known as Agent Orange and sprayed 20 million gallons of it over 6 million acres of the jungle. Once the canyon was deplumed, troops were in suspected villages with flamethrowers to exterminate the remaining vampires. The program was successful in cleaning several large packs of vampires from the mountainous regions of Vietnam. However, many American soldiers and their Montegrad allies remained unwilling to go into the jungle villages. As a result, the Marine Corps abandoned the Cords program in '68 and returned to policy, almost indistinguishable from the armies. And Vietnam jungle were left to the Viet Cong and its indigenous tribes and its vampires. Today's second encounter brings us to California. I was living in the woods of Coarse Gold, California for about a year and 8 months, and this encounter happened twice. Both times were on a dark September night, both happening a year from each other, no moon out to help me see. I'd be lying in my tent and all of a sudden get the feeling of great dread. And then, a few minutes later, I heard sounds of something massive and bipedal sprinting towards my tent. It would always come to a sudden halt right outside of my tent, near where I was lying my head. I would be paralyzed with fear and couldn't muster the courage to move or go outside and see what was going on. All I could hear was a deep, heavy breathing and what sounded like a large mouth grinding, slobbering, and chewing on rocks. After about an hour both times, I'd feel the weight lift off my chest and I'd get out to see what was going on. When I do that, something would be gone. I'm curious to know if anyone has an idea of what it could have been, but it still gives me chills to this day. Thank you. This happened on native land. I don't know if that helps or not. There were grinding holes about 10 feet from my camp, and broken arrowheads everywhere. Today's third encounter. During the warm Canadian summer, I was outside with a friend around 7 at night. We went to a ravine forested area just to hang out. That's when I stumbled on some kind of white meat-looking stuff, and it smelled horrible. It wasn't fish meat, even though I found it in shallow water. I know it wasn't fish meat because it was too white, no texture at all, and it was large, about 1 foot long. I found the meat in several places, and after that continued to mind my own business. It was getting a little dark, so we decided to head back. You can tell where this is going anyways. It takes us about 10 to 15 minutes to get back. Unfortunately, me being a paranoid one, checked my surroundings at all time. I noticed to the left of me there was a shadow of some sort of skinny-looking man thing. It couldn't have been just me, but I shook it off. I wanted to walk in front of my friend, so I did. After a while of walking, we almost reached the end. This time, we were in a field. Looking this time to my right, about 50 feet away, was a couple of trees, and near those trees, I saw the shadow thing again. First of all, I bolted away, looking back, and saw it disappear. I'm assuming my friend thought I wanted to get home fast, because he didn't ask. I recently learned there's a cryptid known as the Wendigo, that also apparently is known to lurk some of the parts of Canada and United States. Does anybody think this could have been a Wendigo, and does anybody know what this white meat-looking stuff could have been? Our fourth and final encounter is a very strange encounter. It comes to us from Susanville, California. 2007, roughly 10 at night. The main witness, who lived on tribal land, was lying on the floor along with his wife inside of their bedroom while their 2-year-old twins were lying on the bed. They had 2 windows in that room, one faced east towards the front of the house and the other towards the garage. The window in the garage is higher from the ground since the garage drops lower into the ground. That night they had their windows open. It was a hot night and there was no screen on the window. They had a blanket over the window instead of a curtain. As they spoke, the husband saw out of the corner of his eye long, dark gray fingers grab the blanket from the outside and pull it open, and then with a gray face looked in on them briefly and left. He looked at his wife and asked her if she had seen the same thing he did. She said yes. The 2 young children could only stare and point at the window. The couple grabbed the children and ran out of the bedroom. The husband describes the face as ape-like with light gray hair around the face and large dark eyes. The creature must have been huge since it was the upper section of the window. The same family saw 5 years before that was as they were pulling into their driveway one night what appeared to be a deer man standing looking at them. This bizarre creature was bipedal. It had a human-like torso, a head of a deer, rack and all. It then jumped over a woodpile and vanished into the darkness. The husband got his 2 brothers and cousins and went outside to look, but didn't find anything.
All right, guys, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to this Midnight Snack bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Guys, thank you for being the foundation of this platform. Without you guys, I would just be talking in this mic to nobody. So thank you. With that, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. These creatures are real, and they are out there. God bless you all.